Hello, everyone. Welcome to this Fasten of Yarnalong event. Did you ever wonder what designers chat about when they meet? Well, today we get to find out. My name is Josiane. My pronouns are she, her. I'm your host. And today we're lucky to have with us Shana from Shanalines Designs, Jovi from Mountain Handmade, Abbey from Abbey and Jessica from Snickerdoodle Knits. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And I will invite you to please briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your design business. So maybe Jessica, if you want to go first.
Yes. So I'm Jessica from Snickerdoodle Knits. I help intentional knitters who really want to create things that not only do they love knitting and making, but they also love using and wearing in everyday life. So they don't have their projects end up just sitting on the shelf unused, but they really get to love them in everyday life. So I design knitting patterns and I teach classes for those folks.
Fantastic. Shana.
Um, Hi everyone, Shana, Shanalines Designs. I also design knitting patterns. I'm and also an architect and design educator, and I really like the way things go together. I like the things that are intuitive and multifunctional, and I'm a more recent hand spinner, and I've been interested in figuring out designs that work well with hand spun yarns. Yeah, that's a little about me.
Thank you. How about you, Jovi?
Hi, I'm Jovi of Mountain Handmade. I'm a knitting pattern designer also, and I definitely lean more towards sweaters and size inclusive sweaters. And particularly, I really like things that I can knit that I can do in a lot of different places. Like it can be something that I don't have to concentrate on too much, but isn't boring. And so I try to make patterns that are the same thing, that I can do them when I'm watching something, or I can take them like to the waiting room or whatever. And that's the kind of thing I try to give to other knitters.
Neat. And Abby.
Hi everyone. I feel like I'm an odd one out because I can't knit. I do. I'm from Sydney, Australia, and I'm a Tunisian crochet specialist. And I specialize in wearables, which are made specifically for the Australian climate. So obviously in the Southern Hemisphere, we're a lot warmer here. We're suffering through a heat wave at the moment. So I work a lot in cotton and lightweight yarns. I also teach locally and within Australia. Yeah, so I'm just trying to bring more Tunisian crochet into the wearable repertoire of knitwear.
Fantastic. So even though you can't knit, you can design. You all have that in common. And really, it's not very often that designers have the opportunity to get together with their peers and discuss their craft. So we're opening the floor for them to do so. And today, as a starting point for your conversation, I will ask, what advice do you have for aspiring designers? And is there anything you wish you would have known when you got started? They get it. And if the conversation leads you anywhere else, that's totally fine. But it's yours.
Okay,
Well,
I'm going to start because what Jessica said made me like totally reminded me of this because she was talking about helping people wear their knits and not just make them, but bring them into their life and incorporate that kind of like joy and pride in what they're doing. And one of the things, so I was a knitter for a long time before I started designing. And one of the things that I didn't know when I started designing and that now causes me pain because it's stress is that I shouldn't actually wear and use like my samples for my designs because some of the and I gave them away, and like my sister-in-law got one that my brother put in the wash, and so it shrunk and no one can wear it now. And so now all this stuff from like my earlier designs, like I can't redo pictures, and I've like learned so much more about like photography and styling, and they're just like I don't even have a number of them, and some of the ones that I do have aren't really in a state to be photographed anymore. So if I had realized that was there's some differences between like for knitters, like I think if you're not doing it as a business, that wearing them is absolutely, in my opinion, like the best thing. Like it's so lovely. And I shouldn't have been doing as much of that as a designer, or I should have been making things specifically to wear and some to like keep pristine for shows and later photographs and stuff. So.
The nice thing is you can still make more samples now. You can make new samples.
You think so? So, but if I'm making an old sample, then I'm not making a new thing. So, yeah. But yeah, I actually am at a point where I'm considering doing that for some of my older things, because I'm like not very happy with their digital presence.
Mhm.
So.
I've been doing that just because like the yarn combinations and things that I used at the very beginning are not my style. And so I'm not as excited about sharing them because of the yarn colors, and it's not really my brand anymore. So yeah. But I don't have a whole bunch of garments either, a whole bunch of sweaters and pullovers either. There's lots more accessories in that group.
That's nice. I'm actually trying to find ways to do more small projects, because I really don't have very many of those.
I was just starting to get into designing garments when I got pregnant, and now I don't have, like, I have a very small toddler right now, so designing garments is like the last thing on my list right now. It requires way too much attention and time.
I can imagine. I was not designing when my kids were toddlers, but
I was.
To go back to the original question, though, what I would tell somebody new, first of all, you are creative and you have new ideas, and your new ideas are amazing and valuable just as they are. I know a lot of folks worry about whether they're creative enough, whether they're different enough. And I hear from a lot of new designers worries about doing something that's already been done before. Oh, well, this is really simple. What if somebody can find this similar thing somewhere else? That knitting's been around for thousands of years. Most stuff has already been done in some shape or form, and some of the most simple designs are the most popular that you see people loving over and over again. So what your people see from you, they're going to love from you, and it doesn't matter if some other designer on Ravelry or the internet or whatever has already done it.
One of the first jumpers that I designed it without doing anything to do with gauge or blocking. So yeah, I wish that before I tried to design a garment that I had a clue about wet blocking or measuring gauge, because even though I can still wear that sample, the first time I washed it, it was sock yarn. It dropped ridiculously, so now it goes past my backside. And it's too long in the arms, like it comes down to about here. So yeah, that's probably one big thing for me is blocking. And when I teach, quite often, even people who have been knitting or crocheting for a really long time, some of them have never heard of blocking. So I'm still, teaching people of that skill.
I'll kind of pop in with something. So I find that I relate a lot of different things I do to a lot of other different things I do. So I said I've been in design education for a long time, and to me, one of the most important things is finding your own voice and finding clarity in your own voice. And so I've had many students through the years, through my architecture and design teaching, or through some knitting classes. They have a point of view that differs from mine. They have an aesthetic that differs from mine. I can still find value in their work if they're doing a good job of executing what they're all about. So one thing, if you're interested in getting into design, one thing that we do in the design education world is we do precedent study. So we're looking at what already exists. And it's one thing as a design student. I know I always felt like, no, I don't want to look at that because I don't want to be influenced by it. But the reality is, the reason why we look at precedent, why we learn from what exists, is in order to find out the things that resonate with us, right? And we figure out, oh, I really like vertical lines. I love circles. Like I really like little, blips of color, whatever it is. If it's from a fashion magazine, if it's something you see, on a friend, whatever it is that you're inspired by, take note of it. right? And understand what it is. You can do the same thing when you're reading patterns. There are some designers and I love the design. I purchase design patterns from a lot of other designers. I knit from other designers because I'm always learning. That's a precedent study for me. And sometimes I think, gosh, that was challenging for my brain. Maybe it was the way it was formatted on the page. Maybe it was the language or the abbreviations the designer used. And then I get the choice in my own work as to what I do. And like another big piece also is so make decisions that resonate with you. And Jessica, you mentioned something of this early a few minutes ago about maybe the yarn no longer resonating with you. You're allowed to change your mind too, right? So like you make a decision, and then at some point, I have a great tech editor that I work with, and at one point there was just a notation I was using, and she said, "Well, you were using parentheses, but then you started using a slash, and the slash feels like Shana lines." And I was like, "Oh, it does." And it was just a simple annotation. And I thought, okay, so if I go back to an older pattern, I am making that change, but I'm not as Jovi was saying, like I'm not spending all of that time to redo every single thing. I just know as I'm growing, I feel like, oh, now I use that slash, right? Which I mean, it sounds silly, but it feels like it has my identity with it. So make some decisions, be yourself, and allow yourself to grow.
I would say exactly the same thing to knitters as well. Because it can be so easy, like outside of the design world, as a knitter, it can be so easy to see what's popular, what everybody else is doing, and you want to do that. And so then you end up creating things, whether it's the yarn, even going to a yarn shop and you love these yarns and you're attracted to them, but then you bring them home and you make the thing, and then you're like, oh, this isn't my color palette. This isn't actually what I wear. So that's one of the first things I tell knitters as well. Or makers in general, pay attention to what you actually already have in your closet. Pay attention to the things like if you're in a store, if you're looking at a magazine, whatever it is, pay attention to the things that really catch your eye as something that you actually want. Not because everybody else is doing it or because it's popular, you're seeing it everywhere, but because it's something that really feels like you and feels authentic to yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've told Shana this before, but I feel like she does a really great job of like the things Shana designs. Like I know Shana designed it before I know Shana designed it. Like her work, her body of work is very cohesive and not in a way that's like derivative of itself, but like you just know that's Shana's. And so like her design voice is really strong and clear. And that's something that this whole time that I've known her, which is some years now, that like I've always really admired about her work. And I don't think like first of all, I know I'm not at that level. I don't really think I'm there yet. That's something that like I'm still kind of working towards. And so like what you're saying, Jessica, like both as a maker and a designer, kind of leaning into that, I think is like so important.
Oh, thanks, Jovi. That you're like making me blush over here. That is very kind of you to say.
That's true.
And then, like Shayna was saying, it's okay to change your mind too. Like, I know from when I first started designing, both my knitting aesthetic and my design aesthetic have changed night and day. I hadn't actually been knitting all that long before I started designing. So I was still just really learning new things. I was dabbling in new techniques when I started designing. And so now it's like I have a much better idea of, okay, what do I actually like? What do I enjoy using? What do I wear on a day-to-day basis? But also I think just as we age, as we evolve as humans, we tend to change our preferences, our personalities, and that's okay. We don't have to stick to what we've loved in the past.
I think one thing also is it can be tempting to try to think that everyone will love me, right? Like everyone will love what I'm doing, and they won't, right? It's just like if you hear from friends or people that everyone saw a movie or everyone read a book, and then sometimes do you ever have that experience that you're like, I did not like that book, right? And it's like I know it was popular, I know it was on the charts, but like I just didn't really like it, and that's okay too, right? So I kind of feel like that. I have to sort of feel like that. I think in some ways because I think I would just drive myself crazy otherwise. trying to sort of chase the people who might like me. Just, I think if
Just
I can feel confident that my voice is in the work and it's clear, and I try to remind myself also, like someone else. I'm designing something and writing a pattern, and that's work to me. It's creative work, but it's work. But then someone else who is making the piece, that's their free time. And so like it, I want it to actually be enjoyable too. And so I have on occasion made things. I think that's the other thing. Not everything needs to become a pattern,
Mhm.
right? Like sometimes it's like I make something and then I think nobody wants that. I don't even want it. Right, Abby, you're shaking your head with that too. Do you have that?
Well, I end up making multiple prototypes of
Yeah.
similar things. So like I've just finished something, right? And I love it, but it's too hard for me to explain in a pattern. So I'm like, okay, how do I rethink this? I've got this great idea. I still want to pursue it. Um, but yeah, that thing, that's not going to be a pattern. It might make it to the Instagram grid, but that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like sometimes I think that I mean, it was interesting, Jovi, when you were talking about wearing samples, using samples. Like, I have a sample of a pair of fingerless mitts that my husband really liked, and I said to him, "Do you want them?" And he said, "No, you probably need them. Make me my own." Right? So, like, I made another pair, right? So I have the pristine pair that sits in the box, but I do like it when, like, if someone in my family and my circle wants to use a thing, I think, okay, that feels like a success because the proportions are right, the material is right. So I'm thinking back to that remark you made, Jovi, and I thought, gosh, that's such a struggle too, right? Because
Mm,
I'm like, I made it because I like it,
mm,
right? Or Abby, when you were just talking about a pattern, I have some pieces that I never intended to make it a pattern. I just thought I just want to make this thing,
mhm.
right? And then you make it, and then someone else sees it, and they say, "Wow, right, yeah." And then Jovi, you had that happen recently, didn't
Yeah,
you?
I did. I did. I made something that was like I had leftover yarn from another design, and I wildly overestimated how much yarn I needed for that one. And so I had all this yarn, and I was like, oh, I should do something with it. And so I started doing this, like, can I make a whole sweater out of this? How can I use this yarn, these because different colors, use these different colors and ways to get something that's like visually pleasing, works as a sweater, because that's what I do. And I was just like what you just said, Abby, I was like just posting it on Instagram for fun because I hate Instagram and I hate having to post things and I never know what to say. And I feel like yeah. So anyway, so having a thing where I was like, I got a thing to say. I can share this thing I'm doing. And then so many people were like, oh, I love it. When are you going to publish that pattern? I was like, I wasn't going to. So yeah, I guess that's another thing that I'm still learning is like like my instincts aren't always right. Right? Like I'm like, this is so simple. Like why would anyone
Oh,
want
yeah.
this? And people are like, I want it. And then something else, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. People are gonna love it. And they're like, eh.
Mm.
That is a great point too. I have a friend who um, several years ago I had made a pattern, I published it, and I don't know, I was getting like a little bit of interest and not that much. And then she told me sort of very directly, I don't think you picked the best photo for like the first photo. And I thought, oh, right, okay. And we had a conversation about why I chose the photo. And now every single time before I publish a pattern since then. And I just told her recently, I don't think she knew I was doing it. I'll give her like four choices. And I'm like, pick your favorite photo, right? Because she was telling me, you know, I wouldn't look at that one twice, right? And so that's tricky too. I mean, that's not advice necessarily. That's just a little bit like, I feel your pain, man, right? Everyone's kind of nodding
It's
along with
so hard
this.
because you're judging
Yeah.
in that case, like frequently I think we all model our own stuff a lot too,
Yeah.
right? So you're not just judging your thing, but you're judging yourself. You're like, how do
Mm.
I look in this? Is my mouth weird? Like my hair stuck up there? And like, yeah, that's a real,
Yes.
I need your friend, or maybe I will start roping you into this. I don't know.
Well, you can rope me into it because that's the other thing. It's like, I can I can look at things for other people, but then I value, I would say also for someone getting into design, I value the relationship I have with my tech editor because um I I appreciate that she has learned my voice and allows me to be me, right? So, just kind of, sometimes it's like, really, Shana? And sometimes it's like, oh, I let me correct this one. And she'll teach me things along the way. I could look at something else and have comment, but then in my own work, I'm like, what's going on? And so I feel that way with photography, right? Like I'll have a whole menu of photographs. So sometimes when I'll share these with my friend, I'll have it in my head which one I think is the right one. I'm putting that sort of in, what does that really mean? Which one I think she'll pick. And I'm not always right. Yeah.
It's also in terms of our pattern writing, our photos, all of it, we're looking at it through a lens of the whole process that it's gone through. We're also looking at it through a lens of, um, the decisions that we made to create that thing. And then we're also looking at it the lens of like, what are our favorite pieces and parts? So like with a photo, it might be, oh, this really highlights what my favorite thing of this design is. And that might not be the thing that everybody else is like actually drawn to. And we're like, oh, I really like this detail. And it's like, oh, this photo actually still shows that detail, even though it shows everything. But then maybe that detail actually doesn't matter. I mean, like, not that it doesn't matter, period, but it doesn't matter in the initial catching their attention.
Mm. I'd extend that also with pattern testers. So I think it's important to pay attention to the feedback that they give us on and also tech editors, obviously. But I have heard of some designers who like my mum pattern tests for knitters all the time for knit designers, and she says, oh, so and so didn't take on the feedback that I gave them, and none of this paragraph makes any sense, and and they tell their friends. So I think that if your tech editor or your tester is giving you that feedback that there's something missing in the pattern or they don't understand something, that it's really important that you address that and not just overlook it, even though you might understand it. You've got to make sure that your reader does.
Especially when it comes to something like understanding. Like, that's something that's really, really important in a pattern. There are some things where, like you get feedback and it's like they don't like this one thing, and you talk to your tag editor, and it's like it doesn't actually matter that was a preference
Right, like
thing.
some things are
Wasn't a right or
some
wrong
things
thing.
are stylistic, right? But
Yes,
then
yes.
some things are actual clarity. Yeah, so Abby, that's a great point.
Yep.
If a bunch of people miss something, right, or misunderstand, then okay. I mean, I had a particular pattern, and I have this very distinct memory that three different people told me they missed one line of directions. Like Josiane, you probably heard me talk about this one before. And I realized it was where the line break was on the page. I moved it because three people missed it. So it actually, my editor hadn't corrected anything because the content was right, but the visual format was difficult. And oh, yeah. So I try to, yeah, it's a balance between listening to the feedback, taking it in, and maintaining your voice. So if the feedback is, I don't even know what that means, right?
Mhm.
Then that's a problem.
Yep.
If it's, I would use bold here, right? It's like, okay, well,
I won't. Too bad.
yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
going to, thank you.
my
Yeah.
pattern.
Right.
Or
Yeah.
when people are like, I would use this kind of bind off instead of this one. I was like, well, actually, I use this bind off because it's a lot prettier, or because, like
Right.
you, you could still substitute a different bind off,
Yeah.
but there's a very intentional reason why it's this way,
Yeah.
even if there's something simpler.
Sure. Oh man.
Yeah,
But
it's
I
good
think over
not
that.
to have, like, you need to find that balance of between your voice and your ego.
I think that's something that's actually really challenging uh, when you first start working with tech editors. Your design is like your baby, and you're like, I'm so proud of this. I'm so excited about it. And then it feels like they just ripped it apart, kind of like, giving your work to your professor and they just ripped it apart. You're like, So I was an architectural engineering student, so I had architectural classes, and architectural teachers are notorious for this kind of thing. Uh,
I'm not
but
that bad. I'm just honest, right? Yeah.
uh, anyway, where it's like you feel like you've put so much work and effort into it, and you're so proud of it, and then to get feedback that, you know, feels like they're saying your work's not so good. That's where we do have to, it's like, okay, this isn't actually a reflection of my worthiness or how good I
Right.
am, what kind of designer I am. This is actually really valuable feedback that can now help me for all of the patterns after this. Teach me how to write this more clearly, or what is more standard conventions, or that kind of stuff. I love my tech editor, and I feel so bad for her for when she first started working with me, because I was very much like, I want to know why I'm changing this. I'm not just going to change this because this is what everyone else does. And so she did a
Right.
lot of explaining to me and helping me and walking me through. And she likes to say now that it definitely paid off, because now I'm one of her easiest clients, because we've worked through so much of that stuff,
Right.
and
Right.
we know how we work. But yeah, back to the ego part. I think that's a place where it's really important, the tech editing, but also the testing.
I think to anyone who wants to make a design, I mean, back to something Jessica said early on about, you know, sort of finding your voice in design. I'm not a great cook, but like there are a lot of recipes for very similar things, right? And part of the authorship of the recipe, the pattern, whatever it is the ingredients, and it's the way you write the directions. So, you have your own voice, right? And so I don't know, there's something that feels like an accomplishment, I think, of getting an idea out of your brain onto paper. Even if, you make one sale, right? That just kind of feels like I did that. I explained those directions to someone of a thing that I thought of, right? Because the gauge, the material, the way you write it, that's all yours.
To the recipe analogy, I love that, because lately I've been using recipes off of a certain app, and I'm like, I don't know if these people are actually like cooks, or because it's like actually a fitness app that also has meals on it. And so um but the wording of the recipes, the way that like the ingredients are listed, there's so many things that are like so unconventional and silly. It's like this does not make sense. So like that kind of stuff, it really does it makes for a completely different knitting or crocheting experience between two different writing styles. Like I know for me, when I was learning brioche, I had the hardest time trying to figure it out, because I was trying to learn from this one pattern, and the way that it was written out made zero sense to me. Like I kept trying to do it step by step, and then once I like got figured out how to do it, I was like, wait, this is so much simpler than I was
Yeah.
making it. But it was like just the way that pattern had it written was so confusing. And so having a pattern that makes that really clear, or has a tutorial in it that makes it really clear, um, can make all the difference in how enjoyable even a simpler knit can be.
Well, we're getting close to the end. That was such an interesting conversation, and I bet you could keep going for a while, but that's pretty much all the time we had for today. So thank you so much for playing along. It was great to get to know you all better through this conversation that you've had. I'm going to open it up to the audience for questions. If there are any, you can pop them in the chat, raise your virtual hand. And while we're waiting to see if there are questions, maybe you could share what's coming up for you, any new design brewing or something, any sneak peek that we can have on what's coming. I see Abby reaching for something.
I'm making little vignettes at the moment. This is just little prototypes of a top that I'm in the middle of. I've already finished, as I was saying, I've just finished making a sample in this yarn and I really like it, but there's flaws in it. So this is sort of what I do. This is the front of a top, it starts off a bit like a granny square. But yeah, part of the design process for me is making little tiny versions of things just to test out how they're going, experimenting with stitches. So um, that's where I'm at the moment.
Sweet.
Really like that color.
Oh, thank you. It's got yak in it, by the
Yeah.
way.
Wow.
Yeah, it's yak
Lovely.
and nylon and by a local dyer in Australia. We've got a pretty good bunch of um dyers in Sydney and surrounds. Very lucky here.
I don't have anything to show, but I just released my Totally Spaced It Super Bulky Cowl, and I have a DK weight version in the works that will come out at some point. I have not sent it. I have not written the pattern. I have not sent it to tech editing or testing. I was thinking it would be January, and then I realized actually I don't want to run a test knit right now, so it'll maybe be February or March.
Awesome. Awesome.
I actually am about to start a test knit. I thought about it too, and I was like, oh, but it's been done. And I'm working with a yarn dyer, and I was like, I actually honestly had thought I would get it done earlier in December, ready for the test knitters, but I didn't. And then I was trying to decide, am I going to do it now or am I going to wait? But we'll see. It's going out to my newsletter tomorrow, and we'll see what they make of it, and then I may open it up further from that. But yeah, that's the test knit tomorrow. Test knit going out tomorrow. I've got a sweater coming out in January, and cuff bracelets. Those are going out tomorrow too. This is these were really fun, I have to say. I usually really, this is part of me growing as a designer. I was like, they're just made with you can use cool buttons and any kind of yarn that you have, so little yarn. My yarn scale was I was putting more things on it to be like, were you sure this is how, because it was having a hard time. It's that's 4 grams. And I was like,
I'm excited for that, Jovi. That looks cute.
good. I think I figured out a fit that doesn't make them all floppy and weird.
Oh, I like that. Oh my gosh, what am I doing? That's a great question. I have a hat in testing right now for a collaboration that's coming out in January. I have a lot of things that I would like to be writing, and as I mentioned, getting into writing for my handspun yarn has been a new challenge, I guess I'll say. And so I have some pieces that I'm trying to figure out the best way to write them. I have some things that I feel like I missed a season on them, and so they might be held off longer. I'm being very cryptic and not on purpose. I have a lot I would like to do, and I'm excited actually just chatting with all of you here. So
Awesome. Fantastic, Shana. Thank you. And thank you so much to everyone for coming out. I don't see questions coming in, so we will conclude. So huge thanks to our designers today, Shana, Jovi, Jessica, and Abby. We hope everyone enjoyed today's designer video conversation, and please do check out our Fasten Off Yarnalong schedule because the event is not over. There are more events and activities coming. It's going until December 31st, 2025. So I hope I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, everyone, and see you.
Thank you so much.
later.
thank you.
Thank you, Josie.
Thanks.